Hey guys, Grifton here, and today I want to talk to you about the Shaman runes and talents in Season of Discovery. Now, you might be wondering why I, a druid, am doing Shaman things. I love the druid class. It is the only class that can play all four roles: melee, caster, healer, and tank. And that is a big part of why I enjoy it. However, the Shaman class has always been a close second for me for a lot of the same reasons, and I think this might be the only time a Shaman tank will be a thing and they can play all four classes. So I've decided to lean hard into the class role during this expansion, and I hope you'll appreciate my love for multiple jack of all trade classes. With that said, I won't be abandoning my druid love. This is my third video today alone. I'll clearly be making the time. So if you're a Shaman or a druid or any class that loves the game of WoW, consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Let's get into it. Before we get started, these are my opinions. There's a lot we don't know. Things will likely change. I'm kind of guessing here, so take everything with a grain of salt, and let's just have fun with this. Let's not stress too much about every single detail yet. Obviously, we've got plenty of time for that, but let's go ahead and get into enhancement. So I'm going to do enhanced DPS first. If you haven't figured out, enhanced now has a DPS and a tank role. So it's going to be like feral. You're going to have feral DPS and feral tank. So enhanced DPS is going to come first. Now, it's actually the harder class to figure out. Now, for the talents, I just went for Flurry. Flurry is going to increase your damage, your speed at which you swing by 10% if you crit. So it's going to be pretty sweet. It is really nice. A lot of the points that you work your way down there are valuable, so it didn't feel like a waste, though there are some points in Elemental that might be worth taking. I just stuck with enhancement for now. This isn't permanent, not etched in stone. But the real thing to discuss is the rune situation. So right off the bat, you want to look at chest and you say, okay, dual wield specialization. Well, obviously I'm enhanced. I want to dual wield. And yes, that does make a lot of sense. I'm going to read this too. Increase your chance to hit with both spells and melee attacks by 5% while dual wielding, and your Storm Strike ability now hits with both weapons while dual wielding. Now, it sounds like a no-brainer, and I'm not saying it's not. But remember, these aren't choices you have to lock in permanently. You can have a chest with dual wield specialization, and you can have a chest with shield mastery. And I think shield mastery is worth looking at. Dual wield specialization does not mean you can dual wield. It means it improves your dual wield. You're going to be able to dual wield whether you have this chest improvement or not, at least according to the description, because it just improves your specialization. It sounds like we're going to get dual wield regardless, probably at level 10. Now, the reason shield mastery is interesting is because if you're leveling alone, yeah, dual wield specialization feels fine, but you might have mana problems. So you could slap on a shield and start regenerating your mana equal to 4% of your maximum mana, and you gain armor equal to 30% of your shield armor value, blah, blah, blah. The main thing is you get some mana back, which is pretty nice. However, you have to block, and your block value is likely going to be low because if you're running enhancement, you probably didn't put your points into shield. So I just put that as a secondary. Most people are going to go dual wield specialization, but you know, consider getting a chest that's got the shield mastery. Anyway, so for gloves, you have 3 choices here, and they're all really good. Lava Lash is kind of your go-to. By the way, I put the one I think is the most likely in the top left corner of every one of these. So if you're wondering which one to choose, likely go with the top left. So Lava Lash, you charge your offhand weapon with lava, instantly dealing 100% offhand weapon damage. Damage is increased by 20% if your offhand weapon is enchanted with Flame Tongue, which you'll obviously do because of this. And that is the kind of go-to enhancement gloves. There are 2 other options for gloves. Molten Blast. Now, I know this sounds like a tank rune, and it is. It's made for a tank. However, there's no reason you can't use Molten Blast. And it is a super awesome AoE. So it blasts enemies in a cone in front of you for 39 to 54 fire damage. This ability generates a high amount of threat. Flame Shock periodic damage has a 10% chance to reset the cooldown on Molten Blast. So you're just going to be spamming Flame Shock because you want this thing to go off constantly. Now, maybe not for raiding or for 5-man because you don't want to worry about threat, but definitely for open world, Molten Blast makes the most sense if you're trying to AoE farm, especially if you're that proc chance hits pretty often. I mean, Flame Shock has a 6-second cooldown, so you're only be able to do a 10% chance every 6 seconds, but that's still an interesting idea to try to go for. So yeah, definitely I would recommend at least having gloves that have that, because I think it'd be a lot of fun to try out. And maybe even in raid, if your tank has absolute crazy threat, you could finally do some good AoE as an enhance. Now the other one on here, and you're going to see this on a lot of them, is Water Shield. This thing is absolutely awesome. If you're not familiar with Water Shield, it's been around for a while. Caster is surrounded by 3 globes of water, granting 1% of your maximum mana per 5 seconds. When a spell, melee, or range attack hits the caster, 4% of maximum mana is restored to the caster. This expands on water globe. Sorry, expands 1 water globe. Only 1 globe will be activated every few seconds. Lasts 10 minutes. Only 1 elemental shield could be active on the shaman anytime. So you right now in normal gameplay, you'd be wearing your lightning shield and it's okay. It does damage, which is fine. However, if you start getting low on mana, you don't really have a quick way to just build it back other than sitting down and drinking. Now you do. You can slap the water shield on, get some mana back, and in theory, keep on pumping and then just switch back to lightning when you want to do more damage. But yeah, water shield for a enhancement might make a lot of sense. However, we don't know how much damage Lava Lash is going to actually hit for, so it's going to be, well, yeah, I can hit with Lava Lash, but I'm all the time, so I put Water Shield on, and then maybe that's the play. We'll see. For legs, you have Shamanistic Rage and Ancestral Guidance. I know that sounds crazy because it sounds like a healing spell. Shamanistic Rage reduces all damage you take by 20%. That's nice in general. You regenerate mana every second for 15 seconds. Mana regeneration per second is equal to 50% of your attack power, 10% of your spell power, or 6% of your healing power, whichever value is greatest. So if you're enhanced, you're going to go for attack power, and this is going to be really nice to get your mana back, because you can just pop Shamanistic Rage, get your mana back, keep going, similar to Water Shield. And if Shamanistic Rage is good enough, maybe you don't need the Water Shield, and Lava Lash is going to be amazing. Now the other one on here is Ancestral Guidance. For the next 10 seconds, 25% of your damage is converted to healing on up to 3 nearby party. I don't know, the sentence doesn't finish, but and 100% of your healing is converted to damage on your most recent Flame Shock target. So if you Flame Shock, pop Ancestral Guidance, 25% of your damage is now going to be reapplied to that guy, because that damage is converted to healing, which then is converted back into damage. Absolutely nuts for an absolute pumper. If you're looking for just pure damage and you don't have mana problems like Shamanistic Rage is implying you do, then Ancestral Guidance would actually be a better damage dealer. At least it looks that way. So if you're going for pure damage, dual wield specialization, and then Molten Blast for AoE, and then Ancestral Guidance, which I don't think was the initial plan for this for enhancement, but it might be the play. I can't wait to see what we end up figuring out how to do. All right, let's move on to Enhanced Tank. So again, same tree. I went with very different points here, which I think is very reminiscent of the Feral Field, where later on you had Feral Tank abilities and Feral Cat abilities, and you had to choose one or the other, whereas in later you kind of got everything. So for this, instead of picking the mana increase, I picked the shield increase. I improved my lightning shield, though I probably wouldn't do that if I was wearing the water shield. And then I improved my stone skin to make myself a little bit more survivable. This was just a pure survivor build, like the toughness at the bottom even just increased my armor, and then the 5 points into dodge. I don't think this is necessarily going to be the build. You probably want to get the crit chance in there instead, but if you're looking for pure survivability because you're wearing, leather instead of, mail at this point, this might be the play for you. We'll see. I just put that up here to give you an idea of what it might look like to be enhancement. All right, now for chest, it's going to be a no-brainer. You're going to go with shield mastery. Each time you block, you regenerate mana equal to 4% of your maximum mana, and you gain armor equal to 30% of your shield's armor value, stacking up to 5 times. That means 150% of your armor is increased if all 5 stacks are on here. You also gain 10% increased chance to block and 50% increased block value. So it's definitely pushing the block meta to increase your up, and the Way of the Earth down in the legs is going to benefit even more. Some things here that are important: you're only regenerating mana 4% of your maximum mana when you block. And the reason this is important is when you're fighting a boss that is a spell caster, you're not going to be able to regen that mana, and you might have mana problems. Luckily, you can just switch to your water shield and it will regen hopefully enough to make it, or Shamanistic Rage. I think this is where it's really interesting as a tank, where you don't just need the chest with shield mastery, the gloves with Molten Blast, and the legs with Wave Earth. You might need something to help you regen mana much more rapidly than you normally do because of the caster situation. So yeah, so Shield Mastery is going to be your no-brainer. And then for gloves, you can go with Molten Blast or Water Shield. So Molten Blast and Water Shield we both already talked about. Molten Blast is going to be your AoE, but ability generates a high amount of threat. This is what's going to make you, I think, compete with Paladins for AoE threat. You're going to have the cone in front of you though, instead of the Consecrate around you. So you are going to have to worry about positioning, which is a little annoying, but I think it's actually makes it a more fun part of the game to have to move around and readjust to keep them, clustered in front of you. Again, Water Shield would be great against a caster where you're worried about mana problems. You can swap to your Water Shield gloves and be good to go. For legs, Wave of Earth is pretty much going to be it, but I do want to add Shamanistic Rage, and I'll get to that in a second. So Wave of Earth, while Rockbiter weapon is active on your main hand weapon, you deal 100% increased threat. No brainer, in my opinion. You gain 30% increased health, geez. Take 10% reduced damage, oh my gosh. Gain 6% reduced chance to be critically hit by melee attacks, oh my gosh, again. And Earth Shock taunts targets to attack you and has a separate cooldown from other shock spells, but has its range reduced to melee range. Oh, but honestly, Wave of Earth is an absolute chad when it comes to making a shaman a tank. Wave of Earth type of Shield Mastery, you're going to be a tank. You're going to have more threat, you're going to have more health, you're going to have less damage taken, and you're going to have mana regen that's going to help you out casting those spells and blocking a lot. Now, the reason I put Shamanistic Rage in here is mainly, let's say you're an off tank that's a soaker tank. I don't know what fights we're going to be experiencing. So let's say you've got like the patchwork kind of idea where like you're the off tank that has to taunt, take some damage. I mean, patchwork doesn't really do that, but you know those fights where you have to taunt for a second, take a big hit, and then it goes back to the other tank or whatever. Reduce all damage you take by 20% and you regenerate mana every second for 15 seconds might be a really good useful tool for an off tank where you can just reduce all your damage by 20%. I mean, that's it. Like, I know that Wave of Earth has a 10% reduced damage, but 20% is more, so that might be a play. Anyway, guys, I think tank's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about this. Okay, so let's jump right into Elemental. So this is your other DPS class, your range class. So for chest, it's a single, oh, you know what? I don't want to jump ahead. Let's talk about the talent tree. I pretty much just went all the way down the Elemental tree. If any class I've ever looked at has made the most sense for where to put talent points, it's got to be this Elemental. I put 5 in reducing mana and 5 in increasing damage. And then I just went down to, I forget the name of it, but essentially it increases even more damage. And you get clear casting all built in. This was so easy to decide. Elemental is an absolute solid choice for the Elemental tree, and that's rare to say, believe it or not, at these level 25 caps. Okay, so back to Overload. So for chest, it gives you Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Chain Heal, Healing Wave, and Lava Burst spell, a 33% chance to cast a second similar spell on the same target at no additional cost that causes half the damage or healing and no threat. Pretty amazing. Okay, I'm gonna come back to this for healing because it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, you're gonna get this. It's amazing. So let's talk about gloves now. You have 3 choices. I'm gonna mention the Water Shield and Molten Blast again. Water Shield for the mana, Molten Blast for the AoE. Yes, you're gonna have to be in melee range to use Molten Blast, but another AoE, even though you have Chain Lightning, might be worth it. I don't know, we'll see. But the main one you normally want to go for is Lava Burst. You hear molten lava at the target, dealing 198 to 256 fire damage. If your Flame Shock is on the target, Lava Burst will deal a critical strike. Again, Flame Shock, push for again. This is really cool. So yeah, Flame Shock, and then you're going to just Lava Burst, get a critical instantly. It's gonna be awesome. So let's go down to Shamanistic Rage and Ancestral Guidance. Now, you've already seen both of these before, and that's because Shamanistic Rage is essentially a DPS thing, though it can be used by any class. Reduces all damage you take by 20%, and you regen mana every second for 15 seconds. You've heard this before, but it benefits from your spell power now as an elemental, so this is still really useful. However, Ancestral Guidance, which I talked about when we were talking about enhanced DPS, 25% of the damage converted to healing, and it mentions Flame Shock, which you're going to be keeping up anyway for the Lava Burst. So you'll Flame Shock, Lava Burst, or maybe you'll Flame Shock, Ancestral Guidance, Lava Burst, and 25% of that damage is converted to healing, and then 100% of that healing is converted back to damage on the Flame Shock target. You could do so many cool things with this where you're hitting multiple targets, like you've got one target with Flame Shock, and then you hit the other one, and it's doing just so many cool things with Ancestral Guidance. It's not a healing ability, though it does heal. It's mainly used for more damage. So yes, Elemental is going to be a lot of fun. I honestly don't even know what classes or what role I'm going to want to play at the end of 25 because so many of them look so fun to me. Okay, so finally we've got Restoration. So for the talents, I really did just go into Restoration. There wasn't a ton outside of Restoration to really build out. You can build your mana in Enhancement to build out your mana pool. That might make sense. I honestly just kind of guessed my way through this. Nothing felt amazing. If you're concerned with threat, there's some threat points you can put somewhere else. But really just trying to increase my cast, or reduce my cast time and increase my mana pool like usefulness, like my mana regen, stuff like that. But yeah, this is pretty much what I picked. You can look around. There's actually a couple choices there. But let's talk about the runes. So for chest, you've got Healing Rain and Overload, which I just mentioned. Healing Rain selects the area 15 yards around target player and heals all of target player's party members within the area for 20 seconds. So Healing Rain is absolutely awesome if you're an AoE healer, if you're like raid healing. You already have Chain Heal. Now you also have Healing Rain. I don't know if you have Chain Heal yet though at 25. That might be a question I don't know the answer to. Regardless, you now have an extra AoE if you want. Now, if you instead do not want to go Healing Rain, you could also stick with Overload, because though it's mainly looked at as an elemental ability, it does mention Chain Heal, Healing Wave. Yeah, Chain Heal and Healing Wave. So it now gives, especially Chain Heal, 33% chance to cast a second similar spell on the same target. If you are the raid healer and you're getting double Chain Heal every time you have a 33% chance, so like every third time, that is a huge amount of extra healing going out at no threat. That's pretty amazing. I gotta say, I actually think Overload looks better than Healing Rain, but I'm probably not gonna be healing, though if I am, I will be taking a hard look at which one of those, because they both look great. Now down to gloves. Water Shield. I know I've mentioned every one. This is the one that actually 100% makes sense. Nothing else makes sense for gloves when it comes to restoration. Now if you're trying to do some sort of hybrid restoration elemental build, yeah, maybe there's something else out there, but for the most part, Water Shield is going to be your play. You want mana, it's going to work out really well for you. And then for legs, we have again Ancestral Guidance and Shamanistic Rage. Notice I flipped them for the healer. I do think the Ancestral Guidance is going to be fun. If you're a healer, you're going to heal. You're going to pop Ancestral Guidance, and then you have to do damage in order to heal. So you're going to have to put Flame Shock on, pop Ancestral Guidance, start hitting that guy, and then healing people. A little more complicated, so it might not be the play for you. If you want to go a little bit safer, you can pick Shamanistic Rage and just get some mana regen back, especially if you're struggling with some mana problems. So that's it, guys. That is the whole Shaman toolkit. I'm curious what you think. What build looks the most interesting to you? I know I've got my favorites. Let me know in the comments below. Shout outs to Wowhead for the info, and all my subscribers. Thanks for checking this out. Thanks for watching, guys. And as always, take care.